Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with my April wrap up and May TBR. It's been a while since I've done one of these videos. And to start off, let me apologize by the dog. You'll probably hear barking in the background. Our neighbors have a dog and he tends to bark when they leave the house. So you'll definitely hear him barking in the background of most of this video. So I am sorry about that. I don't want to wait until he's done because that will be never. So at the end of March, I was still reading a few books, which I rolled over onto April because I wanted to make sure to read them for April. But in April, I was in a reading slump, so I didn't actually read a lot of books. The first book I finished off in April was The Bridge Kingdom. I can't think of the author's name right now, but it is a fantasy romance. It's supposed to be enemies to lover, marriage of convenience, and it's pretty hyped. The series is, I think the third book just recently came out for the series, either their second or third book, I'm not sure, but it was recommended to me as a romance book, enemies to lover, marriage of convenience. I ended up giving this one 2 stars. I am not a fantasy reader, and I wasn't expecting such a fantasy-filled book, so I had a hard time getting into the story. You know, just learning about the world. I got bored easily, and the romance was kind of nowhere in sight. The only thing I really enjoyed about this book was the beginning. It starts off with, I think it's a dozen sisters, and one of them has been chosen to be queen. And then one sister kills off the rest. That's not a spoiler, I don't think, because it happens within like the first chapter. So now that she's been chosen to be queen, she goes off and marries the king and pretends to be this innocent, you know, victim when in fact she is planning on killing the king. So the whole time she doesn't trust him, he doesn't trust her, and it's a very slow burn romance, which I kind of hate. So this book was just not for me, so I ended up giving it 2 stars and moving on. I next finished up Reminders of Him. I started this one in March as well, but I finally finished it at the beginning of April, and I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely love this book. It is about a woman who's in prison because of the murder or the death of her boyfriend, and she gets out of jail and she wants to see her child. So that's the story that this follows. It does have a romantic aspects to it, but that's not the main focus, although it is a large part of the story. I didn't know if I was going to love this, especially at the beginning, but I ended up falling in love with all the characters and bawled for about 22 straight pages towards the end, and it was just amazing because I love pretty much everything Colleen Hoover writes, but lately I haven't been loving her books as much as I used to. So it was really good to love this one again, and I definitely felt a lot of things while reading this, and I really loved it. So I'm happy to add this to my Colleen Hoover collection. The next book that I didn't finish in March that I was planning on finishing in April was Throw Like a Girl by Sarah Henning, and I actually ended up DNFing this. This is a YA sports romance, and I am just not a YA reader as much anymore, especially for contemporary books. I'll read fantasy YA every now and then. I know I just said I'm not a fantasy reader, but fantasy YA is a little easier to, you know, get through, more so than adult fantasy. So I ended up getting bored really quickly while reading this. I decided to DNF it, and I will be unhauling it very soon. So there's that. Next in April, I read Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. This was a buddy read for my book club, We Be Bookin', and I was really excited about this because it is sold as a dark romance and enemies to lover, I guess, and best or siblings, you know, lover or something. I don't know. This is about Cora, who gets kidnapped alongside her sister's fiance, and they hate each other, but through the traumatic experience that they deal with getting kidnapped and dealing with sexual assault, they form a really strong bond while they are in captivity. And so it is a romance between them. So, you know, since he was her sister's fiance, things are not going to go over well. I ended up giving this one 2 stars. I didn't think that the dark romance aspect was as prominent as it's being sold to being. A lot of it is glazed over. Not that I wanted more traumatic events to happen or more descriptive events. I just expected it to take more of the book. Is actually a smaller part. I want to say like less than a third of the book is what is actually, you know, what the traumatic event is. And then the rest of the book is a lot of flip-flopping back and forth between the two main characters as they decide what to do. And sibling entanglement is always uncomfortable. I felt uncomfortable reading about the decisions that they were making. So I felt uncomfortable. I didn't think it was very much a dark romance. And I didn't think that the trauma was as long as it should have been, even though that sounds really bad. But yeah, moving on. 2 stars. It wasn't something that I loved. And, you know, we're just going to move on. I started reading Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I started listening to an audiobook and I didn't know what it was about. I got 25% of the way through it and I was definitely not interested. So I DNF'd it. This was going to be a buddy read for my book club's extension. That's, you know, about California, which is where I'm located in. That was our read of the month. I DNF'd it. A few other people DNF'd it. So it just wasn't a book for us. I've heard a lot of amazing things about it. I know there are a lot of readers out there who do enjoy it. It just wasn't something for me. So I ended up DNFing it. Next, in April, I decided to reread A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. And I was listening to the audiobook. The first time around, I gave this book 4 stars. This time around, I'm giving it more of a 3-star. This is a new adult fantasy. And the first time around, I was really excited about reading it because it's supposed to be a Beauty and the Beast retelling, which is my favorite Disney movie. I was really intrigued with the story. This time around, I had a hard time even paying attention. Maybe because I already knew a little bit more of the world. And I was kind of just anticipating getting to the second book. But I didn't like Feyre as much this time around. I wasn't interested in Tamlin, Lucian, Rhys, anyone as much. The only time I really got into the story was about 75% of the way through, towards the end, when there's the conflict of, you know, Feyre doing things, which I can't spoil, but that was the only time that I got really into the story. And then I, you know, was able to power through and finish it. I wanted to finish it before the end of April because I don't want to go into May with a bunch of books unread. I do have a few, but we'll get to that in a bit. So anyways, I ended up giving it 3 stars. I do want to continue with the series. I want to know what all the hype is about. So I will be getting to that, the rest of the series soon. Hopefully in the month of May, I will get to, you know, the next book, but I'll talk about that in a bit. I then picked up Learn My Lesson by Katie Robert, and I was really hoping to really get into this book, and it's super short. It's sort of a novella, and it's a series. This one is about Hades, Meg, and Hercules, and a romantic relationship that they have. The whole series follows villains and the princess counterpart in romantic relationships. But I've had a hard time getting into it. I'm only about a third of the way into this one, and I haven't had the urge to pick it up. So I don't know if I will be continuing it. I'm going to try. I do want to finish it, but I might not. I might just DNF this once May starts. So yeah. And because I finished my audiobook of A Court in Thorns and Roses, I did start Girl in Ice. by Erica Ferenick. I have this arc, but it's already out. It's been published. So I found the audio and I started listening to it. I'm only about 10% of the way through it, so I know I won't finish this in April. So this is also a book that I want to finish at the start of May. So for May, I do have a ton of books that I want to read, and I don't own most of these, which is not, going well with my Reading to Zero plan, but we're just going to go with it because May is an exciting reading month for me. So at the beginning of May, I do want to get through these 2 books, but I don't want to talk about them anymore. I also want to read 2 of the other books that were on my April TBR that just are going to be rolled over. The first one is Katie Roberts' The Dragon's Bride. This is like a dragon paranormal romance, and I'm really excited to get to it. I don't know a lot about it, but it is a short book, so I'm hoping that I will be able to get through it and finish it quickly. I also want to pick up the second book in the Twilight series. I'm currently rereading it. I didn't love Twilight as much this time around during my reread because so much nothing happens. But I really want to pick up the rest of the series. New Moon was my favorite in the series, so I'm a little nervous to see how I feel about it this time around, but I still want to reread it. So hopefully I'll be able to get to this in May. I'll also be trying to read A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas, which is the second book in that series. I don't know what this one's about, but I'm assuming it's about, some deal that Feyre made in the first book. So I'll find out more about that once I actually start reading it, if I do get to it this month. For my book club's California extension, we're going to be buddy reading Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. This is like Titanic meets Ghost Ship. So I'm really excited. That's all I know about it. That's all I want to know. It's, I think, a horror, and it's also a buddy read for the Weeby Book and Book Club. So I'll be able to both discuss it with my extension and the book club. I'm excited. I haven't read a good horror in a while. Next up, I'm reading The Best Friend Bargain by Crystal Caswell, and this I'll be buddy reading with a Bookstagram book club that is just starting up. It's a few of us joined in on Bookstagram and are going to try and buddy read a book once a month. I don't have a lot of information about the book club, otherwise I would link it down below. But this is the first book we're starting off with, and then we'll be sharing more on how we're going to just run things in this book club later on. But this is a romance novel, and I don't really know what it's about. I think it's just 2 best friends and their romance. Next, I'll also be reading for my book club Firestarter by Stephen King, and I'm reading this one in anticipation for the movie coming out soon. I love Stephen King, but I haven't been reading much of his books lately. So I do own this one. I don't know why I didn't bring it out, but it's, up here on my shelf, my Stephen King shelf. So I'm excited to read this one. I will probably want to watch the older movie with Drew Barrymore and then watch the new movie, but I want to definitely get through the book first. I'll be listening to this one on audiobook instead of physical format, just because that's how I get through Stephen King books better. If you saw my last video, it was an announcement to Thrill to the Weekend readathon, and for that we will be buddy reading The Missing by Kristen Machlin. This one is about 5 people who end up on an island and the mystery that develops from there. I don't know too much about it other than that, and I don't want to know much more, so I'm just gonna read that during the readathon. And I don't have a TBR set for that readathon yet, so if I do come up with one, I'll share that in a later video. But that's it for my TBR for May. It's not too many books, but it is a lot of books that I actually don't own. So I'm a little anxious about getting back to my Reading to Zero later in the year, because I really do want to get through a lot of the books that are on my bookshelf instead of borrowing books or buying new books. But yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.